Hey everybody, it's Corey from CoreyBakerFilmmaker.com, and I just saw Booksmart, written by Susanna Fogel, Emily Halpern, Sarah Haskins, and Katie Silberman, and directed by Olivia Wilde. So Booksmart is about two high school seniors, Amy and Molly, who are about to graduate and go off to great colleges and start their careers doing amazing things, but they've spent their entire high school career studying, and they realize that everyone who was having fun the entire time during high school is getting into the same great schools that they did. So they want to have one night of debauchery, kind of in the line of past teen comedies, your American Pies and Porky's and stuff like that. I really, really enjoyed this flick. I would recommend that people definitely go check it out. It's really a shame that MGM and Annapurna had to release it at such a weird and unusual time with Aladdin in theaters and Avengers still going on, John Wick and just at this point you're still competing with like Detective Pikachu, which has way more money to spend in trying to get people to go out and see its movie in the last couple weeks of its release than sort of the smaller indie flick. But it's a really good movie, and I would definitely recommend seeing it. Both Kaitlyn Dever and Beanie Feldstein are amazingly wonderful in this movie, and that's usually what separates these movies the most, is when you have the most amount of enchanting talent that you have. Part of the reason why American Pie worked so well was because people saw a lot of these actors for the first time, like so Jason Biggs and Tara Reid and Allison. All these actors were just like the first time you've ever really seen them in something like this, and it worked because you sort of became like you found the person who was kind of like you, and then you hooked on, and it became like an actor for you for the rest of your life. And I imagine there's a lot of girls who are, high school aged or maybe just out of high school who see this movie and have that same sort of feeling as like I might have had with Jason Biggs back in the day watching American Pie when that came out right during my high school years. I think that in the future we're going to be saying amazing things about both our female leads. They're both very talented. I imagine that Kaitlyn Dever probably has a more long-lasting dramatic career ahead of her, as opposed to Bonnie Feldstein, who is Jonah Hill's sister, who certainly seems more in line to be more of a comedian, though I wouldn't put past a dramatic role in her either yet. I just, for both of them, though, it's a wonderful look into the beginning of some really promising careers for Kaitlyn Dever and Beanie Feldstein and Olivia Wilde as a director. And I think that it's one of those things that will benefit somebody in the future for having seen one of the earlier works, and I would recommend you do that for that reason. All that being said, it's not a perfect movie. Now, that can be literally said about every movie, but this movie seemed to have a little. So there's 4 writers on it, and it looks like it's 4 writers who worked one after the other. I listened to them talking about the writing process on a podcast recently, and it was, at times it felt like 4 different people wrote this. And obviously the best writing is probably the writing that you don't think about, but there were many times throughout the course of this movie where I started thinking about the person writing it, and maybe a little bit towards the line of Olivia Wilde and the choices she was making as a director and how to portray it in the final product on screen. For instance, this movie definitely has a lot of political motivations, which is fine because a lot of movies these days have political motivations. And, there's great things that come from it. We have a wonderfully diverse cast with a whole bunch of different looking people, and the diversity is not the thing that is the most important focal matter of the thing. So, Amy, Kaitlyn Dever's character, is lesbian, and she's got hots for a girl at school, but it's not about, like, her. This whole thing isn't about the lesbian love that cannot be talked about or anything like that. Everyone's pretty cool with her being gay, and the fact that she is gay never even comes up as, like, a point of contention. Like, it's like we're past that, which is wonderful, because it's nice to see movies where you have, like, a gay protagonist and it's not all about, like, the struggle of them being gay. Like, there should be part of acceptance is also showing people just in open relationships and, like, how it works, and we just are good with it. Like, we just understand. The other side of it, though, is that there are times where and I mean, like, I wasn't keeping count, but there feels like there were, like, 2 or 3 instances where they said something that was in line with a political agenda that did not sound like how a normal person would speak, even a very liberal West LA, very rich, very democratic area. Like, it's just, there were so many times where it felt like there were 3 too many times where somebody was just like, oh, she doesn't fit into your gender conformative norms. And it's like, I've never once said that in, like, a regular conversation, and it sounds awkward once you go to it too many times. It's like if I were to write like, long, you know, like, Shakespearean monologues in the middle of, like, characters have, like, hey bro, what's going on? Oh, it's wonderful, I can't wait to go out into the baseball game for the time that we went to. Like, it would just sound awkward. And then if you do that too many times, people are like, I love the movie, I didn't like all the times where it went into the sort of old English version of events, because it just took me out of what was happening. There felt a little bit like this might be Olivia Wilde's only shot, and she didn't want to leave anything on the cutting room floor, which I think, again, double-edged sword. Like, there were a lot of things that probably would have been better for the overall movie if she would have left out, but there were a lot of things that I think she went for because she was worried about that as well, that kind of made things more interesting in the long scheme of things. Just talking about actors for a second, this whole movie has an amazing cast, and I think that you have great people, from Jason Sudekis, Jessica Williams, and Kudrow, and Forte, who are all doing really great work and are very funny. This movie in general is just really funny. Like, there were a couple times where I was, like, uproariously laughing. And in addition, they like, sort of brought up in the point just a couple seconds ago, like, where I was talking about how Olivia Wilde really went for things. And there were a lot of choices in this movie with, like, camera movement and how we were going to continue to tell a narrative, and how we were going to frame certain things that I think were really amazing. Like, she really has a great eye for it. And I'm excited to see the next couple things she does, because I think the more... in life, it's all about reps. It's, you know, getting your 10,000 hours. It's all about doing it a certain amount of times until you realize what you're doing. My first couple short films were horrible because I didn't know what I was doing. There was a element of it where you could watch it and say, like, oh, I can see there that he understands this without having, you know, gone through the motion a couple thousand times. So his ability to understand this once he realizes what's going on is going to increase. The same thing could be said about Olivia Wilde here. There's a lot of, like, you know, you could sort of see, like, Scorsese influences sometimes in, like, camera movement and things like that. A lot of really cool and interesting choices were made throughout the course of this movie. And on the overall, I would say it's a win, but it just, like, again, it's just, it feels like it's just one of the first times out of the gate for a lot of people. And it's not bad, it's just noticeable. I think that there is a chance that we 20 years from now look back on this time from now until then where we say, oh, Olivia Wilde is one of our more interesting directors. I could definitely see how that goes. I could also see how, Kaitlyn Dever is sort of like a list star. I could see how Beanie Feldstein is just as big of a star as Jonah Hill, and maybe doing the same sort of things as he is on the other side of the gender spectrum, which is just like wonderful. Like, it's great to have people like that, and it just sets you up nicely for what you think the next thing will be. And this movie can be enjoyed much like all sex teen comedies can be enjoyed. It's not meant to be the type of thing that's discussed. Like, it's not meant to be thought of as the same as other comedies or other teen dramas or anything like that. It's just, it lives in its own bubble, and I think that that's wonderful for the fact that the next couple things can be something different and can expand upon it and would open up the possibility of us seeing different sides and different shades of characters who are out there. One last point I wanted to make, just sort of about some of the choices that were made, because this is one that kind of like, again, over the last couple days after seeing the movie, this one sort of sit with me a little bit differently, which is that everyone in this movie is rich, which is fine because it takes away stakes. Like, it takes away from, like, people who struggle know, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay all my bills, or I'm going to be broke after I pay all my bills, or I have rent coming up in a couple days and I don't have enough money to do it, blah, 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 blah. Nobody in this movie has that problem. And on the other end, they are exceedingly beyond that with, like, so at one point, they go to Jared's party. So Jared is one of the kids in school who's nerdy and nobody really likes, and he's desperate to want to get friends. So he has this party on a yacht, like in the middle of a marina, and Amy and Molly are brought to it, and they are the only ones there, along with Hope, who's also sort of the only friend of Jared's. And like, they're reaching into gift bags, and it's like, oh my god, you got everyone an iPad? Like, I get that you're talking about super rich kids and stuff like that, but the fact that you would have, like, 50 iPads in gift bags, like, is kind of separating you away from the majority of people who will probably see this movie. Or, you're talking about, like, there's a high school lesbian who's probably watching this movie and identifying with Amy, and that's wonderful. But maybe one in every million people who go into this movie are going to be able to understand what it's like to be, this rich, where you could just have 50 iPads on a yacht for your party that nobody shows up to, with catering and all this sort of, like, the comedy objective of it is to be over the top, which I totally get, but it also seemed like it was too over the top. So it's just a matter of, like, if that was brought down a little bit, then probably I wouldn't think about it as much. I would just think about, like, oh, these are just generally upper middle class rich kids, or this is LA rich kids, but not every single person who lives in LA is, like, giving out iPads and gift bags at their party. It seems just a little bit of a bridge too far, but it's not like, again, you get where they're going, you get what they're trying to achieve with it. It just doesn't quite materialize as well, and it doesn't ruin the flick. It just sort of, it leaves it doesn't give you that sense of, like, I need to see this again to really get it all. Like, it's not as, it's a mile wide and an inch deep rather than a mile deep and an inch wide. You studied real hard and you got into the same college as all the shitheads. Welcome to the University of Leaderboard. Booksmart. It's not, I'm not going to do a Fast and the Furious leaderboard one on this, just because it's not as much of a comedy as something like Blockers or Game Night was. Like, those are more straight down the middle comedies. I really, I mean, like, it really felt to me the 2019 version of American Pie in a way, because American Pie was funny, it was a comedy, but it didn't play like a comedy up until the moments where they had comedy. So it's like, we have these certain comedy set pieces that we're going to get to, and in the meantime, it's going to be, the friends and the group, and like, we're all in this together, and they're getting together at their normal place, and they're talking about what it's going to be like in college, and like, there's sort of this separation between it being like a straight up comedy in the vein of something that maybe Jonah Hill would be doing, as opposed to what we got going on here. It's very Superbad too. It's very much like sort of Lady Superbad. If I had to give it a rating, I give it an 8.1. Again, really fun flick. We're seeing, I think, maybe the beginning of things to come for a lot of people involved, and I would definitely recommend seeing it for that alone if you're interested in sort of seeing like the next crop of stars in Hollywood. So it's definitely worth checking out. Anyway, that's it for me. If you want more, you can go to my website, CoreyBakerFilmmaker.com, Facebook.com/CoreyBakerFilm, at LegendsC5 on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. I want to go see Aladdin at some point, so I guess I'll go see that at some point. Dog's Journey is still on my list. We got Rocket Man coming out. Gonna try and do 2 a week if I can. So let me know what you think, and tell me if there's anything you want to see. Comments below on this review. Share it with a friend. Please make sure that you subscribe to the Corey Baker Filmmaker Movie Review Podcast on any podcatcher of your choice if you want, because then you can hear these reviews on the go and you don't have to be right there in front of YouTube. So, for me, that's it. Have a great day. I have to get into Harvard.